Good morning. I am Dr. Setlhako from the Teaching Practice Office. If you are taking a journey, you plan your trip well in advance. Why do you have to plan a trip? You would want to know the route, the roadmap you will be taking in order to reach your destination safely. As a teacher, you need a roadmap to guide your lesson. So, your roadmap in this regard is your lesson plan. The transport that you use to reach your destination is your curriculum. You need to use your curriculum to be able to select the relevant topics for your lesson. When planning a lesson, you need to ask yourself a number of questions. The questions you are asking yourself will guide you in planning a successful lesson. If you are able to answer these questions, you will be able to write a good lesson and present a good lesson. As a young teacher, you need to think out of the box, come up with new, fresh ideas and engage learners. You need to grasp the attention of the learners and keep their interest high throughout the lesson. You also need to be creative, hands-on, and excited about the lesson you are planning. When your lesson plan excites you, your learners' interest will follow. A successful lesson depends on you. The questions that you need to ask yourself now when planning a lesson is, what am I planning this lesson for? Why am I planning this lesson? When do I want this lesson to be taught, and where do I want this lesson? When do I want to teach this lesson? And who do I prepare this lesson for? And how do I want my learners to understand my lesson? And how do I want to present my lesson to the learners? Right, as indicated, the questions that you're asking yourself are, what are the aims, the objectives, or the outcomes of the lessons? These kind of questions you have to ask yourself before you start preparing the lesson, before you start writing the lesson. What will the learners accomplish during and at the end of the lesson? And another question, to what level will the learners perform or given the task in order to realize the lesson was delivered, whether the lesson was delivered satisfactorily? How will the learners demonstrate their understanding and that the objectives of the lesson have been reached? These are important questions that you constantly have to ask yourself when planning a lesson. We are not yet at the writing of the lesson. These are the questions that you are asking yourself. You are talking to yourself before you start writing this lesson. It is important, as I said, to think out of the box as a young teacher. Be creative, be innovative, because as old teachers, we need to learn from you young guys. I want to emphasize the questioning section before you start preparing a lesson. I spoke about the what, the why, the when, the where, the who, and the how. We call it the 5W and H. If you use this skill of the 5W and H, you will go through up till your PhD level, because these are the important questions that you have to ask yourself throughout your lesson planning, throughout your writing an assignment, and everything that you do when you write for for your students. It's important. The first one, as I said, is what? What do I want learners to learn? What do I want to achieve? These are the questions you are talking to yourself, and keep that in mind. What do learners know about this topic, because you are introducing a topic? What vocabulary do I want to present in my lesson? What teaching and learning material do I want to use? What teaching and learning material is available for me to teach this lesson? These are the what questions which are very important. before we go to the components of the lesson. The next question is why? Why do I want to teach this topic? Remember, you want to achieve something. So you have to ask yourself, why do I want to teach this lesson? What do I want my learners to achieve? Because you don't just pick a lesson in the street or anywhere in your textbook and say, I want to teach my learners. No, you don't do that. You have to follow the curriculum, and you have to pick a relevant topic for the level of the learners that you are teaching. The next question is, when do I teach this lesson? Some lesson you cannot teach in the morning. Some lesson you cannot teach in the afternoon because the children are tired. Am I going to teach this lesson in the classroom, or am I going to teach this lesson outside the classroom? You have to decide on that one. And the decisions that you make before you plan a lesson, it will help you. You don't just wake up and decide to write a lesson. The next question is, where do I present this lesson? Is it in the classroom? Is it outside the classroom? Okay. Or do you want to take an excursion with your learners and present your lesson whilst taking an excursion? You are decision maker. Remember, as a teacher, you are in control. All the decisions you make will impact on your learners. So it is important for you to make right decision. Who should facilitate the lesson? At times as teachers, we think we know it all. We want to give these children information throughout, day one up to the last day of the year. No, these days, life is not like that. Learners can teach you. Learners can teach other learners. You can also call experts, people who are expert in various areas of the topics that you will have chosen. It's not advisable to be the know-all as a teacher, and as teachers we do not know everything. So learners, more especially these days when technology has taken the world by storm, our learners, it doesn't matter at what level they use technology, they can get information on their own. So when you ask yourself this question, who should facilitate, think carefully, because you want to engage your learners. You want to make sure that the learners understand. And at times, learners can be taught by their peers and they understand better. The last question is, how do I want to present the lesson? Can I involve and encourage my learners to participate in the lesson? Or should I inform the learners of the lesson context and objectives? So this is some of the questions, important questions that you have to ask yourself. You don't just wake up and decide to write a lesson. You have to make your own research, ask yourself a number of questions, and the questions that are important are the 5 W's and H. A lesson plan has components. So we are talking now about the components of a lesson plan. A lesson plan consists of the subject, the learning area, or the subject that you teach. You have to indicate when you write a lesson plan. And then the term, first term, second term, third term, fourth term, and the theme or the topic. You have to go into the curriculum and choose the theme or the topic. You don't just decide on just a topic that you want to teach. You go into the curriculum. Remember, I said we are guided by the curriculum, and each and every grade, each and every phase has a curriculum to follow. So we are guided by the curriculum, and in the curriculum you will get different topics that you have to teach for that particular grade, and you have to indicate the grade. Grade 1, grade 2, grade R, grade 5, grade 7. In your lesson plan, that you have to indicate that. And the date. Remember, On different dates, you teach different things. You can choose a theme, but that theme, you can break it into different subtopics. But when you write that lesson, you indicate, on this date, I'm teaching this topic. On this particular date, I'm teaching this topic. And each and every lesson has a duration. So you have to indicate the duration of the lesson. A normal lesson takes about between 30 and 45 minutes. But also, think about that lesson. If it's a long lesson, remember, learners get bored very easily. You have to keep them engaged. You have to have activities that would keep your learners engaged. So, the duration of the lesson, it depends on what you want to teach, but the duration of the lesson, you have to indicate, is it 30 minutes, is it 40 minutes, is it 55 minutes? You will know as the designer of the lesson. The aim of the lesson. It is very important to indicate the aim of the lesson. Remember, we said you don't just teach, you have a purpose. So you need to indicate the purpose of the lesson. What is it that you want your learners to learn? What am I teaching this lesson? Why am I teaching this lesson? So you have to indicate the aim of the lesson. The outcomes of the lesson. Each and every lesson should have an outcome. And when you write an outcome, you need to say, at the end of the lesson, the learners would be able to write a sentence. For example, at the end of the lesson, the learners would be able to construct a poem. At the end of the lesson, the learners must be able to do A, B, C, and D. And for you to construct the outcomes, you have to use active words like write, jump. They must be able to jump and recite a poem and write an essay. It depends on you. Do you understand? So please do not forget, the outcomes of the lesson is what you want to achieve at the end of the lesson. Learning and teaching activities. As a teacher, you have to have activities that you give to learners to do, and you have to have activities that learners have to do while teaching. So you have to have your learning activities that you are going to teach, that you are going to give to the learners, and you have to have your teaching activities that learners are going to do. It is important because if you do not have activities, learners get bored. You can't just teach and give information, and at the end of the day, at the end of the lesson, you want to give them a classwork. It doesn't work that way, because at the same time, you have to make sure, find out from the learners whether they understand the very little thing that you have taught them. Because at the end, you need to understand that your learners in class will never be the same. You will never get a homogeneous class where their ability and their capability and their thinking and whatever is the same. You will never get a homogeneous class. So you need to cater for the most active learners, cater for the average learners. When you prepare your lessons, you need to cater for the slow learners, because learners, you might find that in your class there are those learners who have challenges, who have problems like in reading. You need to cater for those kind of learners. So it is important when you prepare your activities, those activities are catered, can cater for the different kinds of learners. Because let me tell you, when you teach, there's nothing like one size fits all. So in your class, you don't have one size fits all of your learners. Your learners are not the same, and they will never be the same. Remember, even at home, you have sisters and brothers, but you are different. You are not the same. So take that into consideration, that your learners are not the same. So prepare your learning activities that cater for the different kinds of learners in your classroom. We'll talk about that later. And also, For the learners to understand, you have to have resources. And keep in mind that resources do not teach. Don't say, I cannot teach this lesson because I do not have resources. Resources do not teach. You have to make sure that resources are available. We have internet. We have a whole lot of things that we can use that they facilitate learning. They help you to make sure that learners understand. They do not teach. You cannot say, I do not have a computer, because that's why I cannot teach. A computer cannot teach. You are the teacher. You are responsible. So make sure that you organize resources. Resources are available, technology is available and resources are available with, in the technology, the internet and all sorts of things, right? Also, the type of assessment. That's another component. Type of assessment. You have to indicate, is it formative assessment that you're going to use or summative assessment? We remember with formative assessment, you do formative assessment so that you improve your teaching and your learners also improve. Summative assessment is done at the end of the lesson. You can give them a test, you can give them a final exam, but that is at the end of the year basically. But with the test also, it helps you to see how your learners are faring, and it also helps the learners to gauge themselves, to assess themselves also, right? We still continue with the components of the lesson plan. I spoke about the type of assessment, formative assessment or summative assessment. And you also have assessment forms or methods or tools. What form of assessment are you going to use? What methods are you going to use? And what tools are you going to use? Right? And the one thing that is good these days is that we have internet that you can search up this information, the types of the assessment forms, assessment method, and assessment tools. So that is another component. And learning support activities. What kind of activities that will support your learning? You have to indicate in your lesson plan. And I spoke about the type of assessment. And also, I indicated to you that your learners are not the same. You will have these learners when you introduce a lesson, when you say something about the lesson, because they have read something about that, because they know something about that, they will help you with the lesson and come up with these ideas. So these kind of learners, when you give them activities to do, you have to give them challenging activities, because if you give them simple activities, they are going to do those activities quickly and finish, and they go and disturb other learners. So to save yourself as a teacher from frustration, you must have extended activities. Extended activities are for those learners also who may be regarded as slow learners, who have a different kind of challenges. You need to cater for those kind of learners. So it is important. Hence I'm saying to you, you have to plan in advance. It's like a trip, you plan in advance when you plan a lesson. And it is important to either give them classwork, because that's another form of assessment, or homework. Remember, if you don't do this, children forget. It doesn't matter how old they are. Children forget very easily. So you need to keep them on their tabs. They have to do classwork or they have to do homework. Otherwise, if you just teach, and no activities, no classwork, no homework, they are going to forget. And you will regret at the end of the year, because your learners would have forgotten a whole lot of things that you have taught. And at the end, you have to reflect on your lesson plan. How did you plan your lesson? Reflect. Reflect on your teaching. It's important. So I'm talking to you as teachers, not as student teachers, because you are on your way of becoming teachers. So we regard you as teachers. When you go to schools for teaching practice, everybody regards you as a teacher, much as you are on a path or learning path. So it is important for you to reflect on all these other things that I spoke about. Reflection is very important. You are going to have a diverse learners in your class. There's no way that you'll have homogeneous, learners with the same ability, who are, maybe say all intelligent in your class or slow learners in your, there's no ways you are going to get diverse learners in your class. Hence, you have to have different kinds of activities to cater for the diverse learners. Right, and tap into your various modalities of learning. We have different kinds of learners, in your class. You have visual learners, you have auditory learners, you have tactile learners, those who use their hands to learn. That is why we have TVET colleges. Those who use their hands to learn. Some of them are auditory learners. They sit there, they listen to you, they learn. Some of them are usual. They can see the big picture and learn from the big picture. And if you give your lessons, cater for these kind of learners. And I said to you, you are young teachers. We depend on you. We want you to learn to become good teachers. So please think out of the box, be creative and innovative when preparing your lesson. Okay, in the next presentation, I'll be demonstrating how to write a lesson plan. Thank you.